I'm not going to have you guys necessarily jot down notes per se, but if you want to jot down a little idea or two down here, you can. There will be one slide we're going to have to refer back to because it's going to have like our code that we're going to use for a practice one. Okay, so a lot of times if we talk about spies, you guys probably think about like modern day spies, probably like James Bond type stuff, or maybe you guys have seen like the Mission Impossible movies and stuff. Is there another example of like a good modern day spy movie? I know these are kind of a little bit older.
John Wick.
Who?
John Wick.
Oh, John Wick. Okay, that'd be a good one. So there's a lot of like modern day, like, you know, you're running around the streets of Paris and you're like, you know, a spy and all that kind of stuff. But being a spy has been around for like a long time, like even back in like ancient Greece and ancient Rome and all that kind of stuff. This is a quote from George Washington. It says, he said, "There's nothing more necessary than good intelligence to frustrate a designing enemy, and nothing that requires greater pains to obtain." Now, we're not like all the way through our notes in our Revolutionary War unit, but we can already see George Washington's going to have a lot of things that he's going to have to overcome, right? I mean, he's going up against like the most powerful army in the world. He hardly has any supplies. I mean, there's like a bazillion things against him. He knows if he can get really good information through any kind of like spies and networks and stuff, that's going to be something that might be able to put him over the top and win. Okay. So George Washington actually spends a lot of personal time and a lot of money, which he doesn't really have a lot of as far as resources, on getting good spies and information. So this is from a British general after the war. And he said, Washington did not really outfight the British. He simply outspied us. Okay. So if you go to the like spy museum in Washington, D.C., which is a really cool museum if you're ever in D.C., it's one of the museums in DC you actually have to pay to go into. It's not like the Smithsonian or anything, but it's a really, really good museum. They have like an entire section of the museum just devoted to Washington and how he used spies in the Revolutionary War. All right, now, being a spy, okay, that's kind of what I asked you guys at the beginning here. Being a spy, you could make some really good money. Like it was very lucrative. The problem is if you got captured, you were usually executed. So there were some very public hangings. There was one, Nathan Hale is kind of a famous example. When the British found Nathan Hale, they executed him by hanging him in front of an entire group of soldiers. So it was very risky, but also very lucrative. Okay, in the chat, I'm gonna open it up here in a second. What type of information do you think generals like Washington would have found valuable in the war? So like, let's say you're a general, maybe you're a British general, maybe you're George Washington. What kind of information do you think would have been important to know about your enemy? Now you got to think about it's, you know, the 1770s and stuff. What kind of information do you think would be important? Everybody put something down so that we have some ideas on what to talk about. I'll give you guys a couple minutes to jot some stuff down. Okay, getting some good ones here. All right, give you another 30 seconds or so. I'd like everybody to get at least one thing down in the chat here. All right, so I see a lot of really good stuff here. A lot of you, one of the common things that I see is like troop formation and troop numbers, which is probably one of the most important things because when they fought battles, because it was so much of a, we're gonna just load everybody up against, you know, your men, it's important to know if like the other side has like twice or 3 times as many people as you, right? So that's gonna be important. Because they had to move like entire armies, knowing like when they're going to move would be really important too. So like if they're going to move an entire division on Monday as opposed to Wednesday, That's going to be really important for people to know. All right. A lot of people are talking about like their music patterns and stuff. I'd have to look into that. I don't really know if that many times they figured out like the music. When the war is actually going on, like the battle, they are going to use like the music to signal and stuff. I'm not sure if they ever really like were down to the level of like, hey, that's the melody that's going to have them turn left or something. That's a good question. I'd have to look that up a little bit more. All right. But yeah, like where they're moving, how are they training? Those kinds of things would be super important. Back then, people would not have been able to move as fast from place to place. Like, today you could put a bunch of people in, helicopters or planes or things like that. Like, back then you'd have literally had to have like 1,000 men march somewhere. So it would have been a little bit slower. Okay. What supplies they have? Good. Like, do they have enough ammunition and things like that? Awesome. All right. Good job, guys. Okay. So George Washington was very, very personally involved in all of this stuff involving the war, okay, with spies. Oops, just a second here. Somebody just came in. So it wasn't like he just said, hey, I want you guys to figure this out. He was personally the person that was getting a lot of this information, and he was personally making sure that his spies got paid. Now, part of this is good because then that means there's like less people in between that could possibly rat them out, okay? So Washington himself was like right in the middle of this. He didn't just say like, hey, I want you guys to go figure it out and just tell me. He was in the middle of it all the time. Now, because we're talking about 1770s, there's nothing electronic. So there's no like encryption, there's no like text messages. So everything that you had to transmit had to be physically put on like a piece of paper and then had to be given to somebody, right? I mean, you're not like sending anything with email or anything like that. So you had to physically write it down. The problem with that is you have to make sure that if it's then captured, that they can't just simply read it, right? You don't want to have a note that says like, hey, Washington, I think you should attack on Tuesday, and then fold it up and put a piece of paper. Because then if somebody captures it, all they got to do is read it. Oh, they're attacking on Tuesday. But if you can somehow encrypt it, even if it gets captured, you still have a chance of them not figuring out what it is. So that's what we're going to focus on today is like, how do you have some techniques so that when you actually have a note that does get captured, the enemy isn't able to actually decipher it. So there's like an extra layer there. Okay, so can you make any guesses about maybe how they would have like encoded stuff? Any techniques that maybe you can think of in the Revolutionary War era that would maybe make it hard for an enemy to actually read and decipher a spy letter? So give me some of your best ideas here. Got some good ones. I don't think they used carrier pigeons yet in this one. There are wars where they did. I mean, like World War I and stuff, they did a lot of that. I don't think they used any carrier pigeons in the Revolutionary War. I'll have to look at that. Morse code isn't out there yet. So Morse code is going to come later. They're going to use Morse code a lot in like the Civil War and stuff, but that's going to come about in like the 1800s. So that's a good one, Owen, but that's a little bit later. Invisible ink is one we're going to talk about. Number writing, yes. I see Egyptian letters, kind of like hieroglyphic type things. Kind of. We're going to kind of do some hieroglyphic-y type stuff here today. Owen says lemon juice and fire. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Adding random letters, codex, good. Symbols, backward writing, okay. Scrambling the letters, yep. Okay, so you guys are kind of on the right path here. We're going to talk about a couple of those techniques. So you guys were right on it with a couple of those. So let's start off with the invisible writing one, okay? So invisible writing, they did have some invisible ink type stuff, and they would use chemicals. I've looked into this, and a lot of the chemicals they used are kind of like super toxic today. So, I mean, I guess if you're like a physics teacher or science teacher or something like that, you might be able to get your hands on some of it. But it's kind of hard to replicate a lot of the stuff they use because it's kind of poisonous today. But they did have invisible inks. They could write stuff in one ink, and then you wouldn't be able to see it until you rubbed like a certain powder or a certain kind of chemical over it, and then it would like appear, okay? A lot of times how they would do this is they would have a normal letter, So just a normal letter talking about whatever, the weather or something like that. And then they would take the invisible ink and they would write the stuff that they really wanted the general to see in between the lines. So you wouldn't really know there was a hidden message on there unless you knew that it was a special letter. And there were two different things you could do to reveal this ink. One of them was to put it by a fire. And then as the paper gets hot, it kind of like reveals the stuff. The other is using a certain kind of acid. So a lot of times they would put a little F or a little A somewhere like in the corner of it. And that would be a signal, hey, this is one that you're going to have to use acid to put on to reveal, or one that if it says fire, I'm going to heat it up over like a fireplace or something like that. Samantha, you got a question?
It's not a question. It's I remember like watching one of these like Leonardo da Vinci things with like the Declaration of Independence, and there was like a secret message on it that they had to use lemon, and then put it like, and then take a hair dryer, and then it revealed that message. Like,
I think you're thinking of one of my favorite movies, National Treasure. I think that's right. Yes. Now that's a really fun movie, but there's nothing on the back of the Declaration of Independence. But it is a fun movie. But yes, that's what they do. They put like a lemon, which is like an acid type stuff. Then they put a hair dryer over it. So yes, they do that in the movie National Treasure. Okay, so it's a good movie. It's just there's nothing on the back of the Declaration of Independence. It's actually cow skin is what the paper type stuff. It's parchment. So, all right. So this is an example of invisible ink. If you look really closely, you can see there's kind of like two different types of colors here. And so the darker one is actually what is being revealed after you put the chemical on it. So they just like wrote in between some of the letters. Now, if you want to mess with this at home a little bit, there is a way you can kind of like replicate this a little bit. If you want to take lemon juice, so like the stuff that comes in like those little plastic lemony things, or it comes in like a little green bottle sometimes. If you want to take like a toothpick or a Q-tip, you could write on a piece of paper using lemon juice, all right? And if you let it dry, you can then take just a little bit of baking soda in water, and you can put it over the top, and you can kind of make it reveal. If you want to be kind of creative and careful, you could also take the lemon juice and write on a piece of paper, and then kind of like put a little bit of heat behind it. So you might be able to do it with a hair dryer. You might be able to do it with like a candle or something. Now you got to be super, super careful though. Otherwise you're just gonna like start the paper on fire. But the lemon juice, if you can get it heated up enough, it'll kind of brown just a little bit and you'll be able to see it kind of come through. So maybe you've done that like as a little experiment or something in the past. But if you do like the lemon juice, you could also put, if you use the baking soda first, you could do that. And then if you put a little bit of like grape juice on top, it'll also reveal. So if you want to kind of play with like invisible ink, you know, they weren't really using lemon juice so much. They were using an actual chemical, but it kind of has the same effect. Okay, the one that we're going to kind of spend a little bit of time on here today is a cipher, okay? So if you can put your letters into some kind of cipher, you can have a really hard code to break. The only catch is you have to have the same cipher that the other person has. All right, so on the bottom here, you can see like a little metal cipher. If you have a cipher like this, you can turn the little thing on the end and it lines them up in a whole bunch of different combinations. All right, so that was one thing you could do. What we're gonna do today is we're gonna use something that was commonly called the pig pen cipher, okay? So let's take a look at this code here for a second. Now, typically, if you were doing this as a real spy, you would not line up your letters in order like this, but we're going to keep them in this order just for our example, okay? So notice how you've got a tic-tac-toe board here. So you've got A, B, C, and it goes all the way through. Notice that there's two tic-tac-toe boards. One of them has a dot in the middle of each one. And then you've got this X here. And then on the second X here, you've got the dot. So you've got 26 little different areas, and they all signify a different letter. Now, we're not going to do anything with numbers right now. Okay, we're just going to do stuff with letters. but this is how the Pigpen cipher works, okay? If you take X, for example, okay, X is going to be this little shape like this with a dot in it, okay? So that is what X is. M would be this part of the tic-tac-toe board, again, with the dot inside, because it's the one that has the dots. The A is just going to be this part of the tic-tac-toe board. So notice how they're just using the part of the tic-tac-toe board. So it could be just like, it could be like, you know, 3 sides, or it could be 2 sides. If we continue on here, the R is going to be this part with a dot inside. K is going to be the 3-sided one with the dot inside. S is going to just be this shape here. All right, so does this make sense to everybody? Okay, so you're using, we're not going to use any numbers, we're just using the letters here, but you just use the shape of the Pigpen cipher, and if it has a dot in it, you just put the dot somewhere in it. So it doesn't have to be like super specific, like exactly where you place the dot. It just has to be inside the shape. Now, again, if you were doing this and you want it to be super secretive, you're not going to put A, B, C, D, E, F, G in order, but you would have the exact same cipher as your friend would. All right, so let's practice this. So take out a piece of paper, all right? And if you want to, one way to kind of just get used to practicing this is if you want to put the actual phrase down. So like if you want to write down Liberty Virtual. So like you could actually just, you know, write down if you want to. And then right below it, you're going to put the code. So like if you look at L, right? So the first one is going to just be like these 2 lines here with the dot in it. So ironically, it kind of looks like an L, right? So if you want to do like just this, the symbol right below it. And then if you go to the next one, the I is going to be like this one, but there's no dot in it. Okay. So I want to give you guys just a couple minutes here and try and do this phrase. Liberty Virtual is my school, using the Pigpen cipher. Okay. So I'm going to give you just a couple minutes and then we're going to check and see what that looks like. Okay. Give you a little spy music here to motivate you guys. Okay. So see if you can transcribe Liberty Virtual is my school in Pigpen cipher.
I forgot. What are the dots for? Like K dot.
Okay, so notice how you've got one tic-tac-toe board and then you've got another one.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're using anything over here, you have to include the dot in it. Because if you do this one here and don't include the dot, if you're doing A or J, they'd look exactly the same, but J has a dot inside.
What's the difference with the dot?
Well, if I drew this line and I didn't include the dot, it would actually be an A.
What?
Okay. If I drew,
Oh, that's cool.
Does that make sense?
A little bit, yeah.
You have 2 exact same shapes, right?
Yeah.
All these shapes are duplicated over here. The only difference is there's a dot in these. So notice how A and J are the same shape, except J has a dot in it. D and M are the exact same shape, but M has a dot in it.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yes.
Okay, so like S and W are the same, but the way you can tell that they're different is W has a dot inside.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
We do think they used this a little bit in the Revolutionary War. This was actually a more popular technique during the Civil War, but we do think they used it during the Revolutionary War as well. So if you finish, just wait a second. We're just going to give everybody just another minute or so, and then we're going to see if we got the right answer. So.
I am still not figuring out how to do this.
Okay, so let's take the first letter, okay? L.
Yeah.
All right?
Hang on, Mr. Langhorst.
Yeah.
Can I try and explain something really quick?
Yeah.
So each space on the tic-tac-toe board or the X corresponds with a letter. There are two tic-tac-toe boards, however, so in order to determine which letter it is, you have to add a dot in some of them because there are so many letters that you have to add a dot in order to show which letter it is, because you can't, otherwise you're going to have multiple shapes there. So each little square or each section basically stands for a letter. So L is going to be one of the spaces on there, and you're going to write the space with the dot instead of the L.
So let me go back here. I'm going to show you again on the little example we had here. Okay, so if we talk about X, X is going to be just this little, almost like the greater than symbol with the dot inside. If you didn't include a dot, it would look like the T. So you want to let them know that it's the one with the dot inside. If we do the next word for marks, M is going to be this shape with the dot inside. Again, if we didn't have the dot in there, people would think it was the D. So that's why we include.
Oh my.
Does it make sense?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I'm so stupid.
No. It's just you gotta just think about it in kind of a okay. All right, how are we doing on the virtual or Liberty Virtual is my school? Everybody good? Okay, so let's take a look. So I put down the answer down here. Okay, so I did this last night. Okay, so this is what this should look like. So this will be Liberty. So LIBERTY. Okay, and then this is virtual. So you got VIRTUAL. And then is my MY, and then school SCH. And then you've got two O's there. That's the only place in this little phrase where we've got two letters that are right next to each other. They're the same. And then L. Okay. All right. So does everybody get that? Now, again, this is just an example. We put them all in the right order, but I'm just trying to stress, like, it wouldn't be this easy to solve, because think of how many different combinations there are. If you just like randomly put A, B, C, D, like wherever you wanted to, you would have to have a friend that had the exact same one. But as long as you have the same one as your friend, there would be like an infinite number of possibilities, and it'd be pretty hard to crack.
Mr. Langhorst?
Yep.
I did put all my letters randomly, and I made my own cipher, so my code looks extremely different.
Yeah.
And
So if your own, yeah.
You wouldn't be able to tell they were the same thing.
Yeah. Now you could look for like popular phrases. So you could look for something, and if you saw like a 3-letter word, you might try and see if it's the, right? So like there's ways you could maybe try and like start to crack it, but it takes a while to do that. So okay.
I shall now write egg in my code.
All right. Okay, so that is the pig pen cipher. That is one technique you guys are going to use for a spy letter later. All right, you ready for the second technique? Yep. Okay. All right, the second technique, and this one is kind of tricky, it's called the mask letter, okay? So what happens with this one is, instead of having like a ciphered code, you're going to have a piece of paper that has a bunch of holes in it, like physical holes. You're going to take the letter, you're going to put the piece of paper over the top of it, and through the holes, you're going to see the message, okay? But you're not going to see the rest of the letter. So let me show you an example, okay? So this is an actual spy letter from the Revolutionary War. I know it's hard to read because of the cursive and stuff, but like if you were to capture this, you would read it and it kind of sounds just like a normal letter. But if you had the mask, which is a piece of paper with a hole in it like this, if you put the mask over the letter, you're only going to see part of the letter. Okay, so it's not about like figuring out a code to like transcribe everything. The letters that you need are going to be in plain sight, but unless you have the right mask on top of it, you're not going to be able to actually get the message out. So I know this is hard to read, so what I did was I typed it out, okay? So this is what this reads, okay? So this is the whole letter. You will have, Dr. Sir, I doubt, not long before this, can have reached you that Sir W. Howe is gone from hence. The rebels imagine that he is gone to the eastward. By this time, however, he has filled Chesapeake Bay with surprise and terror. Washington marched the greater part of the rebel to Philadelphia. So it sounds kind of like important information, but the important part of the letter is not this. You have to put the mask over it to just see the actual letter. Okay, so the two letters mean two completely different things. If you have the mask, all you're going to read is the stuff that's revealed. So like when they did this part here is the part that I made red. So the actual message is, Sir W. Howe is gone to Chesapeake Bay with the greater part of the army. I hear he has landed, but I am not certain. I am left at command here with too small of a force to make any effectual diversion in your favor. I shall try something at any rate. It may be of use to you. I owe it to you that I think Sir W. Howe's move, just at this time, the worst he could take. Much joy in your success. Okay, so it's a little bit, you got to kind of think about, how do I make a letter that kind of looks like a normal letter when you read it completely, but then if I put a mask on top, it looks completely different. Now, the mask that they used is an hourglass shape. One thing that will probably make it easier for you is if you want to take a piece of paper, here, I'll draw this over here. So like if you wanted to make it so that your piece of paper and each of these little squares was a hole, you could do it like that as well. All right, if you do an hourglass thing like what this thing looks like, it's pretty hard to do. But if you want to do something like this, where you cut out each of these, all right, and then you fill in all the rest of it as you write it, you can go ahead and do that. Okay, so this is what the mask letter technique is. You're placing a piece of paper over the top to reveal only certain letters. All right, any questions on the mask letter? This one you got to kind of like wrap your head around and think about how you're going to create it. One of the things that I would recommend is maybe doing this first. I'm going to give you a message that you're going to have to do later here, but maybe you write out the message and then, you know, have the holes and stuff, and then put this over a piece of paper and then fill in the rest of it so that it makes sense. All right, so this one you got to kind of wrap your head around, and it might just take a little bit of time to kind of practice. Okay, so that's technique number 2, the mask letter. Okay,
having way too much fun.
Oh, go ahead. What?
I'm having way too much fun with this Pigpen cipher.
Oh, good, good. Well, don't forget the other ones. Don't forget the other ones.
Yes.
All right, the last one is probably the easiest one, and it's called a quill letter. Okay, so you guys have probably seen a quill before, where you have like a, it's like a big, you know, from a bird, and then they write with it and stuff. There's a picture of one down here. So when you look at a quill, it's actually hollow on the inside. So this just means that the message that you write is going to be so tiny that you can like roll it up and put it in like something like a button. Sometimes people would like put these inside buttons, or they would put them inside like really small little things. This is an example here. And then this is like an enlargement. So like, this is just going to basically be you practicing how tiny you can write things, how exactly tiny you can write things. Now, one of the things that they would do sometimes is they would write a message like this, put it in a little metal capsule type thing, and then people would swallow it. Okay. So it was like a hidden type of thing. So there was one famous example where the Continentals found a British spy, and this guy had one of these little metal capsule things. When he got captured, he decided, well, I'm going to swallow it so they can't capture it. Okay. Well, they saw him swallow it, so they gave him some medicine to make him throw it up. And so he's sitting there at the table, and the Continental soldiers and stuff made him throw it up. He then goes into the barf and grabs the metal ball and swallows it again. And they're like, okay, so now we've got two options. We're either going to give you medicine again and make you throw it up, or we're going to kill you and slice it out of your stomach. You get to pick which option. And he was like, I'll take the medicine again. So then he took the medicine again and threw it up. So that's like a real thing that happened. So this is really about you making something as tiny as possible. Okay, as tiny as possible. So we're going to see if you could be a Revolutionary War spy. So you are going to create 3 different spy letters. They're all going to say the same thing, but you're going to use the 3 different techniques. One's going to be a pigpen cipher, one's going to be a mask letter, and then one's going to be a quill letter. Okay, so this is going to be the message here. So you've just heard from a spy in New York, and he needs to get a message to Washington quickly. Patriot lives are at stake. So this is the message that you're going to have to put on all 3 of them. Okay. British General Howe plans to move his 15,000 troops from New York by ship on the evening of September 12th. The British plan to attack Philadelphia. So that is the message that you're going to have to do as a pigpen cipher. You're going to have to somehow use into a mask letter. And you're also going to write as a quill letter. So you're going to have to write it as small as possible for that 3rd one. So they all have the same message. You have to use this message. Okay, but you're going to do it in 3 different ways.
Can we cut down the message at all, or just exactly that?
Well, how much are we going to cut down, Macy? I mean, there's Patriot lives at stake here. So you don't want to miss any important information. You mean like if you don't use the word the or something like that? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, just remove like the, to, stuff like that.
As long as it doesn't affect the message. Okay. I mean, you can't probably cut down a bunch. You could put like British plan to attack Philadelphia instead of the British or something. Yeah.
You could do British General Howe will move 15,000 troops. You know, cut down on all those words there.
You could. Just don't compromise the meaning of the message. Okay. All right. So questions about your task here. You're going to have 3 of these. All right. Now, you don't turn it in today. So you're just going to create it. And then we're going to share these a little bit on Thursday with you guys. And then I'm going to show you guys how to turn them in. But like one thing, for example, you're going to take your quill letter and you'll take a picture of it in some way. We'll kind of help you with that on Thursday. But you'll probably put like something next to it so you can see how big it is, like a quarter or a pencil or something, so we can kind of have an idea of how big it is. You'll end up taking like a picture of your, mask letter, all that kind of stuff. So you're going to work on it this week. And then on Thursday, we're going to show you guys how we want you to turn it in and stuff. All right. So we got a couple questions. Catalina?
You said that we don't have to worry about numbers, but in here we have numbers. How are we going to do that for like the pig pen one?
Good. So you can do one of 2 things. You could include the numbers just as numbers. Okay. So if you want to, you can just write out 15,000. They're not going to be able to know exactly what you mean by it if they don't know the rest of it. Or if you want to like kind of just go next level spy here, if you guys want to create your own pigpen cipher for the numbers, you could do that. You'd have to be kind of creative though. Okay. because we've already used a tic-tac-toe board, and then we've already used, you know, the X type thing. So I have had students in the past figure out some kind of like little shapes or something. If you want to do that, you could create your own for the numbers, but you could also write the numbers if you want to. Okay, good question. Samantha?
Yeah. Yeah. So is this doc in Canvas?
Is it what?
Is it in Canvas?
Is what in Canvas?
This thing that you're showing.
Yeah, this is the presentation that's embedded on the page today.
Okay.
Yep. So if you go to, like, here, I'll just come out of this. Oops. Go back here. So this is in Canvas, right? So all you got to do is just go through the slides here. So this is the message. I guess I could probably copy and paste it and like put it maybe as text on here too to make it easy for you guys to see. But it is just a slide here on Canvas. Okay. All right. Any other things about, let's see, I've got a question in the thing. Could I do a Pigpen decipher on the quill note? You could. So if you wanted to do, okay, so the quill letter, if you wanted to like have a code on it, you could. It's however you guys want to do it. It'd be like an extra level of security, I guess. The quill letter, you're kind of betting that hopefully whatever you're hiding it in is going to be your best like defense. So again, they would sometimes sew these into buttons. They would, gosh, there's like examples where like they might like take a coat to a prisoner that's, you know, being captured or something, and like it would be sewn inside the coat or something. I mean, there'd be all kinds of stuff. So would it count? No, I want 3 different kinds. So Andrew's asking, could you do the Pigpen cipher and the quill? I want you guys to do 3 different ones. Okay. So good try, Andrew. But 3 different ones. All right. Okay. Other questions about the format or the techniques that you guys are going to be using?
I have started to make a number cipher
So
for
what
the Pigpen thing.
What shapes are you using?
I'm using like a star shape, and I'm putting the letters alternating at random on the outside and inside of the star at different corners.
Cool. I've seen, I'm trying to think in the past, I think I've had some students do like a circle. And then if you do like a circle, you could do like, you know, kind of like with the tic-tac-toe board. And then you could do dots in there, and that would be 8 of them. So there's a bunch of things you could do. So you just have to come up with a unique shape for the numbers.
Star.
Okay. All right. So that is your task. Now, if you guys are interested in this stuff, there are some awesome books out there. When I do stuff in my physical classroom, I actually have a classroom set of these. It's a book called George Washington Spy Master. It is an awesome book. Super easy to read. I'll probably share a little story with you from it on Friday. I know that every library in our district has this. And I also know that the public library has a lot of copies of it. And if you really really want to read it, I could probably also go to school and make arrangements for you to pick one up, because I have probably have like maybe 15 copies at school. But this is a really good one, and it's a really easy read. You could read it in a couple minutes. Not a couple minutes, I mean like an hour or something like that. There's a couple other books. Washington Spies is a really good one. This one's by Alexander Rose, and he's one of the guys that is a writer for another thing I'm going to show you here, Turn. It's a TV series about Revolutionary Wars spies. There's a lot of good stuff about Washington and his spy ring. And then this is probably the best of the best books on Revolutionary War spy stuff. It's called Invisible Ink. And the guy that did this one also has a really good YouTube video where he does like a book talk. It's about like 45 minutes long, but he talks about all kinds of spy techniques. So those are really good. And then I know some of you guys like Netflix. There's a really, really good series on Netflix called Turn. And it's rated TV 14. So, I mean, it's not like rated R or anything, but there's 4 seasons of it. I've not watched the entire thing. I've watched different episodes. I need to just sit down and like binge watch the whole thing. But it's based off of the actual Culper ring, which was the major George Washington spy ring. And it's really well done. Like the the way that they film it and everything. I mean, you actually get a feel for like what it would have been like in the Revolutionary War. So if you guys have Netflix and you're kind of looking for something historical or something fun to binge, that's a really good way to kind of find out a little bit about Revolutionary War stuff. Now, again, it's TV 14, but it's not like rated X or anything like that. So, all right. So that is your mission. 3 different spy letters, 3 different formats. Be careful. The British are everywhere.